I'd actually say learning what you're bad at is more important than learning what you're good at. Solidly because if you can learn what you're bad at, it steers you in a better direction to find out what you're good at.
What up, y'all? This is Gio Herrera, and welcome to Untitled.mp3. For audio file number 1, I decided to interview my good friend, Brian Artis. Brian Artis, he's a really talented, great graphic designer. He tells interesting stories through his illustrations, and we talk about topics ranging from, having way too many passions to comparing yourself to other artists and creatives. So with that being said, I hope you enjoy the contents of this audio file, and thank you for listening. Compliment. So I saw that and I'm just like, oh, he probably took it from another Instagram and reposted it. And then it's just like, oh no, he didn't shout anyone out. Did he design this? I'm like, no, that's way too good. When I saw your stuff, dude, I was just like, this is pro level shit, especially comparing to where I was at the time. I'm just like, shit, what? There's no way he did that, because I didn't meet anyone that has done professional type of illustration like that.
I appreciate that, man. If you guys can't see me, but I'm turning red at this very moment. I'm not great with compliments, and Gio knew that, which is the reason why he said take it as a compliment.
100%. So I think that's a big bridge to connecting, was seeing how your creativity worked and seeing how good it was. And it wasn't just oh yeah, one day I want to be a designer, and then you're really ass and you're not working at it. But it's just you just keep working at it. And your Instagram, it comes from a place where you're just oh, not I made it, but it's kind of from where I came from, I'm on a good path right now.
Yeah.
I've accomplished stuff I am proud of. So with that, I kind of want to get into who are you and what do you do?
That is a very airy question, but my name is Brian Artis. I am an artist. I'm a designer. I'm a human that loves other humans. I think from a vocational / what I do standpoint, I'm a designer by trade, an artist by, I don't know what the opposite word of that for is, just on the side. I do a lot of charcoal painting and just sketching in my own personal sketchbook. That's more of me at night. During the day, I am an associate creative director for a agency in Oakland, California.
Nice. And with that answer, I like how the reason I wanted you to answer this is because what you do on the side, it's not exactly what you do for your job, but it's still in the realm of creativity, art, and kind of doing what you're passionate about, right?
Yeah. They both gel very well, especially now where I'm at. I get the opportunity to flex both of those muscles in a bit.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of times, a lot of people who I've known that were artists or went to school to be for fine art or anything like that, and found themselves in the world of tech, also find themselves in the world of being bummed. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes those two things don't connect. You don't get to be the artist that you are and also be a product designer, and all those worlds don't necessarily cross paths all the time. But where I am now, they cross paths very often, and I get the opportunity to be an illustrator and a designer and all in one go. And that is the thing that I feel in my life I had been searching for, the opportunity to find an intersection between these two worlds that would allow me to fully be who I am, versus being a compartmentalized version of myself at work, but then only coming home to sketch and draw and illustrate at that point in time. So I'm really excited about that.
So talking about being an artist kind of in the day and in the night, on your spare time, sometimes in your professional life, were there any signs that you would want to be an artist when you grew up? As a child, were you into drawing, sketching? Did you go to art classes or something like that?
So it's a bit of a story. Hopefully you sit back and along for the ride for a little bit. So to be honest with you, no. and yes
What?
at the same time. Okay, and here's what I mean by that. So I grew up with, I have two older brothers. My two older brothers can draw anything. Like I have my oldest brother who can draw anything from out of his head. Doesn't need to have seen it or anything like that.
That shit's hard.
It's crazy. And then I have my second oldest brother, who was the one who I was really close to growing up, who could draw things that he's seen. Whether it be in real life, whether it be cartoons, whatever it is, he just needed to see it in order to draw it and like come to this sort of thing where he can create his own stuff. And so like I found myself somewhere in the middle of between those two, but my personality is just being very rebellious, and I was like, well, they're really good at that. I don't want to live in their shadow. That's like bad. So it's funny, last name Artis, that's my family name. All of the people in
and just for the record, sorry to cut you off, I literally thought Artis was a name you made up because it sounded like artist. And at the same time, I was kind of like, oh, that's really cool. And then I actually meet you, and you're just like, my name's Brian Artis, and I'm like, wow, his Instagram name is like, it's really sticking to him. And you're just like, nah, that's my real last name, Artis.
Yeah, it was a hard time getting people in college to actually believe that was my middle name. I mean, that was my last name, but I did get them to believe that my middle name was McFly, which is very weird. Something that was not true, I got them to believe. The actual truth, they would not.
And McFly is harder to believe.
Yes. Somewhere in that is a metaphor for life. I don't know. You can find it.
I think you were talking about being in the middle of your...
So I was in the middle. I didn't want to necessarily... all of the people in my dad's side of the family are like, they do something in the world of the arts. My sister was a great singer. One of my sisters was a great singer. My two older brothers, were great, just illustrators. And me, I was like, well, I want to find my own path. So actually, to be honest with you, I ended up doing more of the performing arts. I thought I was going to be an actor. To be honest with you, I did sketch on the side though. Like it was like, oh, this is fun, but like I didn't want to show anybody because it was living it. Like I had my two brothers who were like the artists of the family, and I was like the young baby child who wasn't actually like doing what they could do, right? And people were expecting that of me. And so for me, I was a tap dancer. Hey, funny stories, man.
What?
I did tap. So I was in the performing arts. I did tap. I did acting, so I was Othello. I was the father in A Raising and a Son. I performed at like multiple different places. I played the trumpet. I did all of these other things I did my best to try to find my own way in the arts. And that just is a testament to my personality as like, instead of doing the things that everyone thinks is like they should do because they should do it, I want to come to that conclusion on my own. Maybe that's just like, I don't know, that's just who I am. And so I ended up coming to the conclusion one day when my brother Kevin, R.I.P., rest his soul, showed me how, like, just was seeing my sketches and was like, oh, I can help you with that. And mind you, these are like distant brothers and sisters. And so we just connected over that. My first characters I started drawing was like emulating like the Disney style, adding to new different characters in Disney, but then also just like learning how to draw them step by step.
And this was around what age?
This was around just hitting the double digits, so like 10, 11. I started getting into that. I was doing more acting and stuff like that, Shakespeare, blah, 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 when I was like 9, 8, going forward in like middle school. And so he showed me how to draw, like at a professional level, and was just like pushing me, would come to the house and like show me how to do different things. And that's really how I got into it. And from that, my parents started like buying me like books and like, here's how to sketch. I actually still think I have one of these really large books that shows you the step-by-step of how to draw Mickey. But I still wasn't taking it seriously.
What was your go-to sketch? Like mine, I did a lot of graffiti in middle school. Yeah. So my go-to letter was the S, and that's what I would just constantly work on.
Was it the dollar sign S that you did the 3 lines on the top, 3 lines on the bottom, and then you connected them?
At first, it was that one, but then after that, try to make it look like it's melting or something.
Oh, that's cool. So you started off like normal, like what every artist does. You copy something, and then like from as you go on, as you start to create it into your own style.
Exactly.
Things that I drew, I think I just was into characters. I was really into characters, and so it's so funny. One of the characters that I'm working on now, which is Man in Beanie, is like something that I had. It was something from my past that I had just been sketching all the time. It was literally like my tag. It was like that sort of thing, and it didn't look like what it looks like now, but that was my like go-to. It was all character based, and so I would try to draw. I would actually be sitting in class, and I try to draw characters from in a Disney style, and that was like my thing. Big faces, big eyes, a lot of emotion, that sort of thing. But I didn't take it seriously until 11th grade. My brother, who taught me how to draw, my brother Kevin, passed, and that was really hurtful for me. I still kind of like, trying not to tear up now. That was like a really hurtful situation, and like he believed in me so much when like I would draw like Dragon Ball Z characters, and people would like make fun of me and be like, "You traced that. You didn't draw it. You didn't draw it." And I'd be like, "I just spent this whole weekend drawing this from scratch, and like you don't believe in me." And my brother Kevin was always like that person, like, "Yeah, I like this. Cool. Maybe you can tweak some shading," showing me how to like use the side of the pencil for shade, all of that sort of stuff. And then when he passed in 11th grade, I had a really, really hard time my 11th grade year. And I think that's when I really picked up diving deeper into like mechanical drawing and painting. He did all of that. Like he could, touch any canvas, any medium, and like blow it up. And it would be so crazy. And I just wanted to, I wanted to take what he believed in me and like go somewhere with it, but also I wanted to honor him in like a way.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully that was a roundabout story.
No, that's
but
man.
I don't to answer it directly. I don't think I seen it. I thought I was going to be an actor or something like that, possibly a scientist. And then it wasn't until like around 11th grade where I was like, I think I'm going to do something with this.
That's cool. Thank you for sharing that, man. I know that must be like a hard thing to go around, like to talk about again, but I feel like that loss inspired you to be like, okay, I think I want to take this serious because you saw this in me and you would give me like advice, and I don't want to like dishonor you by just saying what you said was great and just like throw it to the side.
I didn't want to forget it, you know, like all the stuff he taught me. I feel like to me, like it's you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to just put all the things that like you showed me into play, and all the belief that you had in me into play. I still in my head these days, whenever I have an accomplishment, just hear him be like, yeah, that's good. So
a little critique comes after that.
Yeah, a little critique comes after that, but like it's just the thing that keeps me going forward.
So before you got like heavy into like your illustration, what were some failures that you did try? You did try some stuff, but you're just like, nope, I thought this would have been my gift to express myself, but it's actually not. Because I think learning what you're bad at is just as important as learning what you're good at.
I'd actually say learning what you're bad at is more important than learning what you're good at.
There you go.
Solidly because if you can learn what you're bad at, it steers you in a better direction to find out what you're good at.
Yeah.
When you say things that I failed at, I can mention numerous amounts of things. I'm letting you know now, if you look at my Instagram, it looks like all things are peachy keen, and they were not always that way. I was terrible. But do you mean just in design and art in that world, or do you mean like just in general?
I think, I guess let's stick with like art, like just like expression, creativity, inspiration.
Okay, because I was gonna say like I thought I was gonna be a rapper at once.
That's art.
That did not work out. Although I did win one rap battle in Philadelphia. That was a big thing. I was terrible though. Never be a rapper. Sideline of advice, tell your friends when they suck, please. Like, don't be that friend that lets your friend run with a dream and they suck, okay? But
we have so much alike because I tried rapping. I have under my belt 3 recorded songs. I don't have them anymore, but 3 recorded songs that I'm sure are terrible, and I would pay to hear those again.
Yo, same. I definitely think we are very similar. I also have at least 2 rap battle disses on a MySpace music page
Oh, no.
somewhere on the internet, unless MySpace deleted. I'm just going to tell you to search Be Easy,
Ooh.
which was my rap name, and then type in MySpace, and maybe it'll show up. I have no clue. But failures outside of rap and football were like in art. I think I am a shitty painter. I'm terrible at painting. And the crazy part is some of my biggest influences come from painters. I'm a big Matisse fan. See, I have like a crap ton of Matisse books like over there. Caravaggio, who was like mind-blowingly amazing. Bernini, who was a sculptor. I'm also terrible at sculpting. These are not my finest areas, and I've tried all of them. Like in school, I took sculpting classes, failed miserably. Did a lot of ceramics, failed miserably. It is therapeutic, but it wasn't my calling.
Yeah.
I really wanted to be a great sculptor, like keeping it real. I wanted to be a great sculptor. I wanted to be Bernini, and have that. I wanted to be the all-around artist that most people that I grew up from like watching in terms of like from art history classes that could paint. They could do charcoal. They could do any medium that you put in front of them, and it was great. Like look at Andy, man. Andy Warhol, who like kind of like transcended just the art world in itself as a graphic designer into like just being this I can touch anything and it'll be great type person. But I failed at all of those things. I failed at like.
Was it hard for you to kind of grasp that, like, man, even though I enjoy doing these things, it's not my calling because I'm not that good at it? Because I think when you think of, like, something that wouldn't be your calling, you would probably, well, me, I would think of something, I probably hate doing it. I would never do it. But it's just like, just because you like doing it, it doesn't mean that that's what you're made to do.
Yeah, 100% for sure. Everything you like doing, you're not going to be great at, right? And also too, I still believe in the putting in. I can't remember the actual quote, but it's like putting in the like thousands of hours to be a master at your craft.
Yeah. 10, I think it is.
Yeah, and like you put that into it, and I think I probably could be a great sculptor. I probably could be a great painter, but I think I cared way more about expressing myself. I think I found my lane. And I think everything else to that is secondary. I don't actually believe in. I believe in callings, but I don't actually believe. I believe in callings, but I don't actually believe in that. There's one specific thing that you can do only. I actually believe that there are multiple different things that we can do, and it's all about putting in the time. So, like, I think that if I cared more about being a sculptor, or I cared more about being a painter than I do now, I probably could be good at it. But I failed miserably at it because I didn't really care to be that great like at it. I actually really loved the people that I was inspired by, but I like more it's more admiration for me than it is actually the want to do. And I fell into, after I found my lane of like being able to draw, illustrate, and then like also now like being a product designer, I think that was like where I realized, hey, I'm good at this. And then these other things, like I don't have to be good at. Like I'm okay with not being a jack of all trades. I'm okay with being like a master of one, and rolling with that. I don't know if that answered your question in any sort of way.
I'm pretty sure you did. But I was gonna ask you. I like that you mentioned the jack of all trades, because I struggle a lot with like focusing on one thing. Like let's say design. I'm focusing on design, and then next morning I'm just like, dang, but I really want to work on podcasting. Oh, next day, but dang, I really want to work on photography. How do you like balance that out? Like you have so many passions, but you're just like, I have to give one passion the majority amount of time so that I could get good at one. Just like really, really good, and be kind of okay at everything else.
My advice in that, man, is just like, I love photography. I've taken multiple different like sculpting classes and things like that, and would love at some point in time to be that, right? But I also believe that if you split your time, you'll be you'll be like a generalist, okay, where you can kind of be like good at a lot of, you can kind of be like okay at a lot of different things, but never really like good at like one thing. It's like people can depend on you to be like, okay, I need to get some photos taken for my wedding, but then I also need somebody to design like my invitations and brand my whole like experience, right? And you're like, cool, I can give you like 30% for like each of those things, right? I can give you, my design work is going to be 30% good, my photography is going to be like 30% good, and everything else that you asked me to do. It's, you know what I mean? And it breaks down like that. I think fine, and I could be completely wrong, and I'm pretty sure there are a lot of different creatives who think completely different, but I try to steer myself on a focal point. There's a lot of times I'm like, ooh, I want to go out and do a photo walk. I just showed you my camera. Like, I want to go out and do a photo walk and just like get inspiration. And I think how you do that is, for me, as me trying to grow and being an illustrator, I do take photos, but I don't take photos for the sake of like being a great photographer. I take photos of moments that I eventually want to illustrate later down the line. So all of these things I get to be able to do all of these things, but it streamlines itself into my main thing. The other day,
that's crazy.
I have a great photo that I think.
Like that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was gonna say I never thought of it like that.
I have a great photo that I think I took the other day, and I had to like scheme to take this photo because like this one dude was like looking directly at me, but of like people being crammed on BART, like literally to the door, and I took this photo because not because I think it's a great photo, it was just an accurate depiction of work culture, but I took this photo not because I wanted to be a great photographer, because I was like, ooh, I want to draw this at some point in time. I want to illustrate this because this is what will like, inspires me. And so all of those things connect back to one thing. I also believe that you need to have multiple different like outlets that are different from what you are doing in order to be able to fuel what it is that you're doing on a regular basis, right? Your main source of thing. If you're into illustration, you need to be able to like go out sometimes and not be illustrating and like focus on photos, because that, as a creative, you need to consume in order to create.
How long did it take for you to learn that? Because I think I literally just learned that after my trip to Portland. Like, I came back from Portland with so much inspiration. Shout out to Portland. That place was fun, man. But I came back from there with so much inspiration to create, and I was just like, I didn't know that actually living life can inspire you to create. Like, before that, the way I created was I looked at Illustrator and I just sat there thinking of something and nothing was coming out. So how long did it take for you to notice, like, maybe I should listen to some music, maybe I should take a walk, maybe I should have a conversation, and this will inspire me?
One, kudos to you for, before I actually answer that question, but kudos to you for being able to stare at Illustrator and then come up with something. That is hard. I get very scared of a white canvas, which is why my first, when I was taking my studio art classes in college, I did charcoal paintings, because you start with a black piece of paper. So it's fully filled. I'll show you some later. Wow. It's fully filled, and you draw with white, like this kind of like white charcoal or whatever, and you erase.
Wow, that's cool.
It's a lot better. And also, too, you start with a white piece of paper that you fill with black charcoal, and then you just use an eraser to draw. So it's a lot better for me to go backwards than it is to go forward. But anyway, to answer that question, I think it wasn't until I was in the same space that you're talking about now, like being like, I have so many different ways that I feel so inspired to create, and so many different avenues that I can take: photography, illustration, now graphic design, telling stories through advertising, product design. Like, there's so many different the avenues that you can go through, and I actually really think that it wasn't until I burnt myself out in each of those areas and recognized a pattern for myself. It was like, I would burn out in illustration and somehow find myself taking like dope photos. I'm like, when I was illustrating, I wasn't this good at like taking photos, but now I'm like here, and now I'm inspired to like do something from it. And so it would be like, I burnt out at work, just trying to be creative all the time.
Yeah.
And I recognized that the things that inspired me most was when I was not doing the thing that I was actually trying to do. And so I think that's when I figured it out, right? Like, it was like, I'm trying to illustrate this piece. Even when I did the work for Bernal, right? Like, I literally went to Bernal Heights and I sat on top of the hill and I looked, honestly, that artwork came from conversations with people.
Damn.
Sitting on top of Bernal Hill, taking photos on top of Bernal Hill, writing poetry on top of Bernal Hill, just experiencing Bernal Heights itself. And I came back home and made something. And once I realized that was how the creative process for myself worked, I was like, oh, okay, all of these outlets that I use, I don't have to be 100% great at them. I actually use all of these outlets as fuel for the thing that I'm trying to be great at.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think that also ties in exactly what you said earlier about the streams. And there's a whole bunch of streams that you have that inspire you, but it all leads you to one big stream, which that stream would be illustration, design. But again, what pours into that is like photography, maybe music, conversations, etc. That's pretty, yeah. I think
humans are a really big inspiration for me. I'm sorry, I know you have like, I don't know. I didn't mean to cut you off, but humans are a big thing for me. I'm a big human person. I love interactions with people. I love asking random people questions and just hearing what their experiences is. I talk to my Uber drivers everywhere I go because and they have said things that like I've sketched things about, right?
Nice.
Like stories that I've heard, things like that. And yeah, man, I think all of those things just inspire you to like produce better works in and it really helps to have a focal point. Like if you're like, right now in my life, I feel really, really pulled towards illustration. I feel really, really pulled towards like photography. I feel really, really pulled towards like cinematography, right? Okay, cool. How do I make all of the things that are currently in my view a part of what I'm trying to create?
Yeah. They're all like tools that you pick up. Like that's how I've been looking at it lately. Like, damn, when I was trying to rap, that was like a tool that led me into trying to make beats. And then making beats was like a tool to just loving music. And then loving music was like a tool that inspires me to create. I feel like they're all little tools you pick up to just like build one big thing, kind of.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's an artist by the name of Marcel Duchamp. He's a French artist, and he goes and talks about like one of these people. He well known, and he does an interview, and someone asks him, "Hey, well, it's been so many years since we've actually seen you create anything. Like, don't you think that as an artist you have to often be creating?" And he says it's one thing that like has been an inspiration for me, which is something that we're talking about. And he's like, I have to consume in order to create.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what that consuming period is. It can be a year, it can be a day, it can be like 2 years, it can be 5 years, but I need to feel like I've consumed enough in order to then have an output. And I think that's what I mean when I say making sure, like, how is it that you take in what's around you, whether it be through photography, all of these different avenues, and allow it to like push you towards a focal point where you can then create things that are like in your realm of like creativity to express yourself, right? Like it's one of those things where like you have to consume. Like bottom line, you have to consume to create.
Yeah, you told me the other day, follow a whole bunch of people, get inspiration from them, like their stuff, and it's gonna help you create. You literally told me that like last week.
It's the best thing ever, man. Like I feel like this. How do I use the things in my life to my advantage? Instagram. I find myself on Instagram way too much. To anybody listening, please like tone down.
Problem.
Yes, it's a super problem. Instagram is the new crack. And so what I did was I was like, okay, if I'm going to be opening my phone and then getting on Instagram at least like 2 to 3 times like every 30 minutes or 2 to 3 times an hour or whatever it is, then how do I make sure that that's a part of my like creativity? And so I just followed a crap ton of people that inspired me. So every time I open my Instagram, I see something and I'm like, ooh, that's cool. And I'm saving it. And I'm like going back through that. And then that is just like taking the things as they are and being like, how do I point this to like help me along the track that I'm already on, help me keep focus or whatever. Like, because it's hard to break those habits, and if the habits are already there, use them to your advantage versus like trying to combat them all the time.
Yeah. In your journey of like designing and just being in art and expressing yourself, did you ever struggle with comparing yourself to other artists?
Oh, all the time, all the freaking time, man. I think like it's hard with things that I just mentioned, such as like Instagram and following all of those people. It has a backfire of like, dang, that's good.
Damn.
You know what I mean? It's like, dang, that's good. How do I get to that level? But at the same time, it also, me as a competitive soul, it also pushes me to want to do better things.
That's good.
And the comparison theory thing happens in twofold. First fold is like when you're still trying to figure out who you are, and you're like, I want to do this, but I'm not as good as this person. I'm not as good as that person, or that person is damn good. I don't know how I'm gonna get to this level when I'm here. And that was me. I did that a lot, and still sometimes when I'm going through like my whole, I try to be very vulnerable, but like still when I'm going through my imposter syndrome like phase, I kind of find myself looking at other people as if they are like, oh, this is better, man, this is good, this is not good, what I'm doing, when in fact I think it's really about knowing who you are, knowing what you bring to the table, being confident in that, and getting very confident in that. That helps you stay a bit grounded when, you know, the balloon of life lifts you off the ground a little bit, right? Like, and that's kind of like, for me, just to be very, very honest, I find myself in oftentimes like in comparison mode via social media. Those are the times where I have to like feel like I have to turn social media off for a little bit and create like from what's out in front of me with my own two eyes. But it happens in twofold. First fold is when you're trying to figure out who you are, and then the second fold is when you go through those dips in creativity, where you feel like the stuff that you want to make isn't like as good as like what you're actually creating, and then you're looking at other people and you're like, dang, that person is doing it, and I want to be doing it right now. And like when you think about it and you see those things from Instagram, you're like, oh, I don't know how long. The problem is you don't know how long that took somebody to make. You don't know whether they made a bunch of stuff and they're finally just showing it. You don't know any of the backstory. You're just looking at it as their highlight reel, and you're trying to like compare your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. And so it's tough. I think as an artist, like you always want to be doing things that like speak to the people, that speak to your soul more importantly. And then if it speaks to the people, that's fine. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But like you always want to be creating things that you think are fresh and are like new and like giving new perspective on life. Like I've been like working right now through like expressionism, which doesn't involve any design at all. Storytelling and like getting really good at that and like things like that. But I think I go off on tangents every time. Like,
dude, you're like dropping little gems whenever you do, so I love it, man. But you're answering the question and giving way more that I enjoy, so you're all good, man.
But through just to answer the question directly, I'll say that yes, I do find myself in comparison mode. I do think that comparison is the thief of joy, and so when I find myself there, I often try to like call it out in myself and be like, oh, you're comparing yourself to multiple different people, and like at this moment that is like hindering you from actually creating things. And so therefore you need to take a step back from consuming. That's when I actually think that once you start comparing, that's when I actually think that it's like a kettle, right? Like to me, being in love with coffee, so I'm gonna make a coffee reference here. Like if you're using a kettle, when the water starts to overflow at that point in time, that's when you know that the kettle is like either too hot or just hot enough, right? For those who use a regular water kettle, not for coffee, is when you hear the whistle. And so, like, I think once I start comparing, I feel like I'm at the brim of consuming, and therefore I've consumed too much, and now I need to take what I've consumed and start to create some things from that. And I start writing things down. Again, going back to what we talked about before, different avenues. I get into writing, I write poetry, I start taking photography, I go sit in a park, I do all of these other things, and then I start to create. So imposter syndrome is real, comparison is real. Neither of those things actually help you create, but I think when you're in them, I think the best thing to do to work yourself out is to just start creating stuff, good or bad, have no judgment on it. Stick figure drawings, like all of that. I think that's the best way to go.
What are some in your journey and your road to like designing and all this? What are some of your proud moments, whether it be professionally or whether it be just like on your own personal time type of stuff?
Professionally, I'll do two, and they'll be brief because I can talk a lot. But professionally, I think for me, it was just like, I think in the last job or phase in my career that I had, I recognized that I was I'm not cocky by any means, but like I recognized I was a good storyteller. Like verbally, I recognized that I could like tell great stories just from the opportunity to be able to tell those stories and stand on stages and like talk to people in tech and have people look at me like, oh man, you're like a great speaker. Like we want you to speak to this. Like
that's cool.
I think that was like one of my top notch accomplishments was standing on stage at a conference that I designed fully. I did it for 2 years back to back, conference called Spark in San Francisco, and getting to speak to people and give them the emotional feeling of what design is, and how it impacts them on a day-to-day life that they don't actually even recognize. And I got to talk to people. I got to stand on the same stage that like other people from large companies like Uber and Peloton and like all of these things like had crossed.
That's awesome.
And ended up being like, I ended up getting highly rated as like the number, at least like top 3 talks of that conference. And like I only spoke for 7 minutes, and these people were on stage for like maybe like at least 20 minutes a piece, answering like very, very large, like in-depth questions. And I just talked about design from an emotional standpoint.
That's cool, dude.
From a more personal standpoint, I actually am proud of just some of the new pieces that I have coming out now. And this is more of a vulnerable situation. I've been very scared to start sharing my work. I have a hard drive full of stuff that I've never put on my website. I've never put on the internet at all. I've never shared with anybody. That wasn't in a one-to-one situation. So if I went on interviews or I was showing my like portfolio to people, I always had some things that I would pull out of my hat to be like, oh, and I did this and I did this. Here's what. But I've never like shown it publicly.
Yeah.
And I think I'm proud to like be getting over that hump. I haven't gotten completely over it, but I'm getting over that hump. A lot of that comes through the thing that I love a lot, which is people just talking to me and being like, man, this is great. You should just share it. Just share it. Or if you don't want to do it, like Jenna said something. She was like, look, just send me all of your stuff. And if you don't want to share it, I'll press the, send me all of your stuff. Give me the password to like your Instagram account. And like, if you don't want to share it, I'll just post it and share it for you.
That's awesome. It's scary, dude. It's such a vulnerable thing. Like, I hate it when like, people look at me and I'm like, just getting the idea. So I'm like, don't judge the idea. It's just a sketch. And then I get mid-process. Don't judge the mid-process. It's almost done. And then when it's done, I'm just like, don't look at it. Like, I'm going to keep it in my pocket.
I'm not going to tell you anything about it. It's like you did all of that just to like hoard it for yourself. And yeah, I think I'm just getting over that. That's on a personal level. That's where I'm like, I feel the most accomplished at right now. Because I have some actual cool things that I think are like coming out, some prints, some posters, some apparel. I'm really into like wearable art these days. I think that's the avenue to go down. And
I guess the last question, this has been a really good conversation. The last question, I've really been feeling like, it sounds cliche, but putting things out into the universe, like I've learned what that meant within the last year. Like, I really wanted to get into coffee, and I just went around telling people, like, yeah, I want to get into coffee. I want to do this. And then I meet, like, people who can put me in those positions to learn. And I put myself around people who also do love coffee. So I guess this is kind of like, this question is kind of like, put it out to the universe. Like, what are some of your, like, your goals to do, like, in the future?
Professionally, goals, I am going to say this. I will stand on the stage of Apple and speak during WWDC. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I'm speaking that into existence. It's something that I'd love to happen. And whether it's talking about design or art from a perspective as an artist, or like talking about product design, it will happen. Throwing that out there. Just trying to be confident in it. Trust me, I'm like shaking in my boots. But I think there's that. I think the biggest dream, though, right now on a personal level is I really want to own a coffee shop retail store, a place where I can showcase my own artwork, as well as like other people's artwork. Again, apparel as art is like something that I'm really into. But then from a coffee standpoint, like I've really gotten into coffee over the past 2-3 years. It started off as just me wanting to have a morning routine, and then me falling in love with it. And so then with a coffee shop retail store, I get to find that intersection between the thing that I've like just found out that I loved, which is coffee, making coffee, creating community between people, and providing a space where people can come up with creative ideas and create things, as well as like being able to create my own things, and sell, or like be able to sell them, or ever be able to give other artists, from whether it be from my hometown, Philly, or from locally from San Francisco themselves, an opportunity to use the walls in this brick and mortar that I have as a art show. And that was actually one of the things that I really liked from Portland. Sorry to go off topic,
No,
but
all
like
good.
if you go into a lot of different coffee shops and restaurants, they have local artwork on the wall that is for purchase. So it has the name of the artwork, the name of the artist, and also the price tag on it. And that's twofold for the business. They get artwork to put on their walls. They get to curate and be a kind of like a bit of a museum to an extent.
Yeah.
But then also too, for the local artists, they provide another way of them streaming income by allowing them to sell their work there. So, it's like a partnership. And that's kind of like where I want to be. I'm all about creating community. I'm all about humans and loving on humans. And so for me, coffee shop retail store is a place where I get to do all of those things in one space. That is my big dream that I'm putting out into the world, aside from being a speaker at WWDC.
I think those two dreams are awesome. I'm not going to say it because I don't know if you want to put it out there, but just to let you know, I love the name of your future coffee shop. It's awesome.
Oh, I'll tell it. Name of the future coffee shop. I'll tell it only because it's already trademarked and everything like that, so it's fine.
No freaking way. Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's dope. I didn't know that you went that far with it and trademarked it and everything.
So it's called Common Folk. I'm actually already putting out, again, I'm starting the retail side of it, so be on the lookout for Man and Beanie, the first artwork series that I'm going to go through. It's a dream sequence. It's a I wouldn't say it's a lifestyle, but it's a way of expression from myself. I've kind of like found a way to put myself and things that I've experienced into the artwork. And it's all coming out under a line that's also called Common Folk, which would be native to the actual coffee shop called Common Folk. So yeah, man, I'm totally cool about putting that out there. That's like completely fine.
Dude. Well, thanks for doing this, man. And I think this was a great conversation. Learned a lot. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to like the conversation we had.
I hope so.
Thanks for joining us. And thank you, listeners, for listening to this. I hope you got to know who I am, who Brian is, and got to learn some tools to pick up. Got to get some tools to pick up on your journey of creativity. Before we leave, man, plug yourself. Where can they follow you? Where can they just see what you're doing?
So on Instagram, I have two. I'd say there's like Studio Artis, where I try to like put more of my work at, and then there's like the Artis, THEE. I spell Artis phonetically, so THEE, ARTISSE. And then Studio Artis is STUDIO ARTISSE. And then you can check out my portfolio online, which is www.studioartis.com. I think that's it for me.
Well, there it goes. Audio 1, Untitled MP3. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you for having me on your show, G. I really appreciate it.
It was
man.
a long time coming, dude.
Yeah,